The gavel hadn't even cooled when I blew my own cover. The witness at the stand wobbled her paper cup, missed her mouth, and before my brain could get between my mouth and my heart, I stood up and blurted, "Mom, are you all right?" The courtroom stopped breathing, pens froze over notepads and across 20 feet of carpet. The defendant went the color of printer paper as the word hung there like a bell I couldn't unring. That was the morning the lie we all lived by cracked right down the center. The man at the defense table, polished hair, silver tie, clip a name that opens doors in 3 zip codes. Looked at me like a ghost had said his childhood nickname out loud. In another life, he was Daniel Rios from a cramped place off Lomas Boulevard, where the faucet whistled and the heater sounded like a bus. The world knew him as Calvin Mercer, founder of Mercer Dynamics, names on hospital wings, big smiles for gala photos, the guy billionaires call if they need a favor. I knew him as the man who walked out when I was 6 months old and never turned around. 15-minute recess, I said, steady as I could right as my hands started to shake. Council chambers, Ms. Ruiz. Water for the witness, please. We are in recess. The gavel cracked too loud, bounced off wood, and landed in my chest. In my chambers, defense counsel performed concern like it was opera, conflict of interest, appearance of impropriety, mistrial language already sharpened. My clerk pushed the recusal statute toward me, eyes wide like we were both standing on a moving train and trying to decide if jumping would make the landing better. Outside the door, I could see him through the glass, the suit, the chin, the stillness of a man who made a life out of not flinching. In my head, a smaller sound clicked, an old latch turning, the one that holds a door closed over a part of your life you never visit unless you have to. Yeah, that happened. We went back in. The gallery buzzed like a beehive under a blanket. Defense rose to speak, and then he stood first. "Your Honor," he said, voice calm and calculated. "I understand I could request reassignment. I waive that right. I trust this court. Let's proceed." His lawyers tugged at his sleeve like lifeguards begging a man not to wade farther, but he didn't sit. He looked at me, and for a breath I saw the kid he used to be staring at the person he tried to erase. "If it were you, what would you have done?" We proceeded. That's what you do when fire walks into a room and you have a bucket and a badge with your name on it. But if you want to know how we got to that morning, you have to follow me back to a 4th-floor walk-up that smelled like fried oil and winters that slid under the door at night. I was 2 weeks old when my mother, Elena Ruiz, came home from a double at Bernalillo County General with a raw heel and a bag of generic diapers, and she knew by the weight of the air that something was wrong. The TV gone, the recliner he swore he would fix, gone the trophy shelf naked with dust rings where memories used to sit. He left a note. There's always a note. "Elena, there's a shot in Chicago. Clean start. No distractions. You'll be fine. You're strong. Dan." Clean. Like a word could wash off the parts of you that don't match the suit you want to wear. My mother did the cold math you do when nobody is coming to save you. Rent due in 6 days, $74 and change in the bank formula for a week bus fare. Light bill, that doesn't care about feelings. She sold her ring for $40, learned to sleep in slices, held a flashlight between her teeth, while she changed fuses, scrubbed and studied and prayed and swore depending on the day. We ate rice and eggs until we could afford something that came in a box with a picture on it. We saved pennies in a jar with tape on the side. We kept going. I grew up in hallways. I knew the vending machine on 3 took wrinkled bills better than the one on 5 knew how to make a waiting room chair into a bed with my backpack for a pillow. Knew the smell of antiseptic like a second language. When I was 14, I stood in an ER cubicle and watched my mother's lips go white under a fluorescent bulb while a machine beeped a rhythm that scared me. The cardiologist said it kind. Severe anemia, arrhythmia. Your body is writing checks it cannot cash. I went home and made a promise over a chipped kitchen counter. If I learned the rules, maybe I could make them fair. That sounds simple. It was not simple. Law school came in a big envelope I opened with both hands because they were shaking. I did clinics. Nobody invited donors to wage theft housing immigration forms held together by staples and hope. I clerked for a judge in Detroit who told me on day one, your job is to translate power into plain English and tell the truth even when it makes no one happy. I took a government job that paid in apology money, but paid my soul in another currency. I stood at the back of rooms and watched janitors teach lawyers how a time clock can lie. Years passed. I put on a robe my mother bought a navy suit, and when I touched the bench for the first time, it felt like gripping the doorframe of a house we built out of patience and coupons. I worked. That's 90% of the story nobody wants to watch. Then one morning a case file slid across my desk with a caption like a drum roll. United States v. Mercer Dynamics. The CEO listed below personally charged racketeering conspiracy criminal wage theft. I stared at the name and felt the old latch click and the old room open. I could have recused right then. That's what the statute is for. I took the file home, read until midnight, and saw emails with words no one writes if they still know what their name sounds like in their mother's mouth. Exempt this class, reclassify that one, stop counting donning and doffing crush complaints at the supervisor level, dissolve the shell after the heat dies down. Numbers weren't numbers anymore. They were groceries, antibiotics, bus fare, a pair of winter boots a kid like me would have liked to have. I walked to the lake and watched the dark water and wrote 2 memos, one where I step off, one where I stay. I slept on it the way you do when either answer feels like stepping into traffic. In the morning, I filed the one that kept me on. You already know how the first day of trial went. You heard what I said. You felt the room tilt. After the recess, we did the only thing you can do when the truth rearranges furniture. We set the witness back on the stand and asked the questions anyway. My mother, who everyone called Ms. Ruiz because you don't get to call her mom, steadied herself and looked at a room full of people who have a lot of opinions about single mothers and not a lot of experience being one. She spoke like a nurse who knows time in units that matter 15-minute breaks, that aren't breaks when you're still charting an hour of overtime that disappears when you're told to clock out, and keep going, the quiet hunger from skipping lunch for the 5th time this week, because the cafeteria raises prices and the patients still need you. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The government built the wall 1 brick at a time. Miguel, a maintenance tech who kept the lights on in a warehouse that siphoned his minutes. Alicia, a housekeeper with gloves that tore, and a supervisor who told her sick days were for people who liked being unemployed. A forensic accountant with a diagram of shell companies like a carousel you fall off of if you ask the wrong question. Emails with sign-offs that carried the same neat signature again and again. Calvin sat still the way men do who have trained their faces not to move when cameras look hungry. But his cheek twitched when an internal memo used the phrase frictional inefficiencies to describe people's time. Yeah, that phrase exists. Do you think that's fair? Pattern interrupt. A supervisor under subpoena, smooth as a Sunday anchor, says donning and doffing protective gear isn't work because you can listen to music while you do it. The gallery laughs low and not kind. My mother tilts her head the way nurses do when they decide if a patient is lying to themselves or to the chart. The prosecutor raises an eyebrow, no heat, and slides a policy memo across the rail. Read the sentence, please. The man stumbles over strategic compensation restructuring, realizes the words he wrote in an office with good coffee sound ugly when your throat wraps around them in public reaches for water. The room tastes like pennies. Little moments like that, they teach you more than a closing argument ever will. Defense tried a late recusal shot, sidebar whispers about appearances, fairness, clean record. I asked the only question that mattered for the record. Mr. Mercer, do you maintain your waiver? He looked at me, not at them, and said, I do. Twist. The man who ran from me as a baby stood still long enough to be judged by the child he left. Was it courage, guilt, control, all of it? I still don't know. Pattern interrupt. Maybe he wanted to be punished by the person he injured the most. Human beings are not clean math. The jury got the case on a Monday and sent a note at 4:16 p.m. We have a verdict. A kind of silence happens, then, not shock, silence, gravity silence, like the room knows what to do without being told. They found him guilty on all counts: wage theft, conspiracy, racketeering, the words that sound like TV until you see the people behind them, a pantry that doesn't echo lights, that don't flicker a pair of gloves, that don't tear when you're bleaching a bathroom for the 50th time. I asked him to rise, he did. He looked smaller, even in the same suit. I said what the law required. And one thing the law never says out loud: you cannot call what you took an efficiency. You cannot call people units and expect them to forget their names. Sentencing would come later. Justice has calendars, but the story was already a headline: billionaire found guilty, judge calls witness mom. People love outrage with a twist. Now here is where I tell you what happened next, and no, you don't want to miss it. Stick around, because what happened next will blow your mind. Sentencing day, same courtroom. Different air, brighter somehow. He asked to speak. I would like to apologize, he said, then remembered the rules, faced the gallery, and tried to aim contrition at people who weren't there because they were at work. My mother sat in the third row in her navy suit, and he stared 1 inch to the left of her face like the sun was too much for his eyes. He turned back to me and wrestled with the only apology the law recognizes, one that leads to action, not absolution. I imposed the years, the restitution, the monitor, the compliance, the injunctive relief, all the words that keep a lid on a pot that has boiled over for too long. News cameras left with numbers and left behind the human arithmetic of what the numbers mean. Then the letter came. White envelope, my name on it, the handwriting slanted in a way that made my stomach tighten. I put it on the corner of my desk for a week, which is either discipline or fear, depending on your angle. One night I opened it. Amara, it began, and yes, that is my name, and yes, seeing it in his hand did something I am not ready to name. I know I have no right to say your name. I will not pretend I deserve the minutes it takes to read this. Then the letter did something men like him almost never do. It got small and simple. I traded my life for a costume. I felt important until it stopped fitting. Watching you work was the first time I saw integrity from the outside. Your mother raised someone I cannot define without stealing your word for it. I don't ask for anything. He signed it, Daniel, a name that never did fit the slant of his letters. Here comes the twist you did not expect. I wrote back. Not as a daughter, because I never got to be one of those to him, but as a judge who had to decide what to do with a letter that asked for nothing and asked for something. Mr. Mercer. I wrote, restitution is not a feeling, it is a plan. If you want to give something, you did not have to give. Fund the Worker Center on 51st that helps people file wage claims and holds clinics in a church basement. Do not put your name on it. Do not take a deduction. Send the check through counsel. If you make a headline out of this, I will refer it to the Monitor. Do not write to my chambers again. I signed it with my title and sent it back through the boring proper channels that keep the water level in rooms like mine. A month later, the director of that center sent me a one-line email. Check arrived, anonymous donor significant asked for a receipt with no letterhead. I closed my eyes and let the world tilt 1 degree. Does that change the crime? No. Does it change the story? Maybe it changes yours, maybe it changes mine. You tell me. People ask, should I have recused? Should he have insisted that I do? Is justice supposed to be antiseptic, or can it carry fingerprints and still qualify as justice? Here is the mess of it. I followed the law. I made a record. He waved on the record. We tried the case in daylight and the jury spoke. The rest of it is the part we all live with when the microphones are off, the what you do with the pieces afterward. The Sunday morning pancakes that never flip perfect on the first try. The letters you answer like a judge because being a daughter is not an option on that form. I still get messages about that day. Some people tell me I was heroic for staying on. Some tell me I was selfish. Some tell me prison solves nothing, and some tell me not enough. Here's the only truth I trust at 2 a.m. when the city is quiet. A maintenance tech now clocks out when he stops working because a monitor might show up on a Tuesday with a clipboard and a question. A housekeeper wears gloves that don't split. A little boy in a fourth-floor walk-up got the cereal with the cartoon on the box and didn't have to put it back. Is that the arc of the universe bending toward justice? I don't know. Maybe it's just Tuesday, and Tuesday is enough. We do have pancakes on Sundays. My mother and I, a ritual that tastes like promise kept. We don't say his name in that kitchen. That is our rule. He took enough already. He doesn't get our Sunday, too. Sometimes she catches me looking at the window, the way you do when you remember too much at once, and she pulls me in and says, "Mija, we made it, look at us, we made it." And I laugh and flip the next one and burn it a little because I get distracted and we eat it anyway. You know what I mean? So now I'm going to hand you the mic because this part isn't about me. It's about what kind of world you want to live in. If it were you, would you have stepped off the case or stood your ground? Do you believe he waived recusal out of courage or control guilt or gamesmanship? Does an anonymous check to a worker center chip away at a debt like this? Or is that just a rich man's bandage on a wound he opened? Is prison a solution, a symbol, or a shortcut? And what do we owe each other when companies call stolen minutes efficiency and the rest of us call them bedtime stories missed and dinners rushed and backs that ache in the cold? Drop your take, argue with me, argue with each other, but keep it honest and human. That's all I ask. If this story hit a nerve because you've been called baggage, or you've watched someone reinvent themselves by walking away and calling it ambition, tell us what happened. Tell us what you did next. Like this, if it gave you anything, you can use this week, subscribe. If you want more stories told without the varnish, and share it with someone who needs to hear that clean starts are earned, not stolen. I'll be here next week, same time, same kitchen coffee, in a chipped mug, pancakes, a little too brown on one side, ready to listen to yours.